Okay, Joseph M. Lenard, writer, podcaster, other things. Thank you for being here today. How are you, and what is taking up most of your time these days?
Uh, Writing my next books, doing shows like yours, and yes, thank you for having me. But first, I, lame humor. I can't resist. I see the title of your show, and I immediately think the Geico ad. What day is it?
Oh,
Woo
yeah. Mike,
woo!
Mike, 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 Mike. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a brilliant, brilliant advertising. Marketing works.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's lame. Oh, it's so lame, but that is exactly my humor. It is so effective because of that. They're just a the 60-year-old child humor that's been around forever, make an ad like that out of it, so effective.
hmm It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Have you ever used Geico for anything?
No, actually, uh, it's great for government employees, which was what it was created for. Government
hmm
employee insurance company, Geico. I've gotten quotes from them, and they've been absolutely ridiculous because I've never been a government employee, so
Hmm.
they're yeah, the cost through them to insure anything that I've had was ridiculous. My auto insurance, not to be an ad because I don't get a kickback. I wish I
hmm
could,
hmm
but I Cure Auto Insurance came through Michigan a few years ago after we finally got our no fault insurance reform laws done. So I'm with Cure Auto Insurance, which I think originally was out of Pennsylvania, getting a far better rate than what I was getting with AAA.
Hmm. You get the bundle on that? Like, does it do house insurance too?
They do, but I don't. My
Hmm.
home is through State Farm, although I need to look again. You know, hadn't filed a claim in forever, and of course, had an ice storm last year. Had to file a claim, so of course they raised the rate. So I need to shop that around. But you know,
Insurance. Yeah. It's a thing.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
a wonder that life insurance isn't like more of actual life insurance instead of whether you're alive or dead, but more of like you put your you take a test and they tell you these are your proficiencies, maybe kind of like an ASVAB or an SAT, and then you pick what you want to do with your life, like the steps you want to do, your number one plan, your fallback plan, maybe a plan C, and then you insure that. And if for some reason it doesn't turn out, you get your number one of an architect, then they pay you a certain amount because you ended up being some other type of engineer, and you're okay. Or if all of that falls through and you end up doing something completely different, then you should have a payout from your life insurance because it's not working out how you expected.
That's interesting, but like you said, as long as there's aptitude tests and things
Yeah.
like that involved. Otherwise, obviously, yeah, I plan on being a rocket scientist 10 years later. Pay me.
Yeah.
Well, you were never going to be a rocket scientist, obviously.
There was the show Amazing Stories. This is probably 20, 30 years ago now, but one of the plots of it was this little kid and he had to go take a test. And they were very cryptic about what the test was, but he was studying for it for a long time. And his parents are like, look, you got to do what you can do to pass this test. And so he goes, this is a spoiler alert for this Amazing Stories. And he goes to take a test and turns out that it was some sort of an aptitude test and he didn't pass it. So they killed him. So, yeah.
It sounds like a Twilight Zone episode, too, even would
Amazing
be.
Stories, Twilight
Yeah,
Zone, Outer
yeah,
Limits, all very similar. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I used to love watching Twilight Zone and Outer Limits. I have not watched the newer spin-off, like you mentioned, version of it. I I I, I found that creativity is lacking these days. It seems a lot of everything is a reboot or a rework, rehash of something somebody's already done.
Mm.
It's a shame.
Yeah, that there's a great quote in the new Battlestar Galactica. Speaking of reboots, where I think it's Colonel Saul Ty, I think is the character's name, talks about if you point your finger back far enough, some germ gets blamed for splitting in two or something. So yeah, it's
I love
everything.
Battlestar Galactica. Yeah.
Yeah, everything's based on the Odyssey, and then what's the Odyssey based on? Who knows?
Yeah. In
Yeah.
fact, I've been waiting for a reboot trilogy. I've been expecting. I'm a big fan of also Stargate. My favorite TV series was
Mm.
Stargate SG-1. Roland Emmerich was the mastermind behind that, and Independence Day, Moonfall of late, the Day After Tomorrow. So many great. My favorite film of all time came from him in Centropolis Films Productions, I mean. The 13th Floor, which was a Matrix movie before the Keanu Reeves Matrix films
Oh,
came out. Same year, 99. The 13th Floor, to me, it's much more feasible, and I won't give any spoilers. I don't want to give that away, but I love that. But I mentioned Stargate because I know Roland Emmerich has been fighting with MGM to bring a trilogy reboot of that to the theaters for 2 decades now. And I've also heard rumors of Battlestar Galactica getting rebooted, but yet we haven't seen it. So that's why I bring that up.
yeah. It's well, the Battlestar Galactica. What was that new one? Was done in early 2000s, or
Are you talking
was
about
it more recent?
the Cylon one on Sci-Fi
Hmm.
Channel? And
Yeah.
that was pretty good. I think that only lasted like a season though. But yeah,
What? Check your sources on that.
oh,
I think that was quite successful in maybe 3 to 7 seasons or something. I don't know. I remember on the first time. I mean, I heard of it when it first came out, and then on Portlandia, they had a show where they were just watching all the seasons and all the seasons, and that was funny. And then for some reason, I started watching it, and I thought it was a few seasons, and
it might have been. I might not be remembering correctly. And
I,
then there was also the recent reboot of War of the Worlds with that Daisy chick that was in the when the Crawdads Sing movie. I enjoyed that series. That was good too.
oh, that was a TV show.
Yeah, yeah, they did like 3 or 4 series of a reboot of War of the Worlds. Had Gabriel, I can't think of his last name. One of the guys from The Usual Suspects was in that also, but the main star
Hmm.
was the Daisy. I can't think of her full name. I'm having a block, but
Okay.
yes, from the Crawdad Sing movie, which was very good, which was kind of like a throwback To Kill a Mockingbird type
Yeah, yeah.
storytelling and age of movies. So I really enjoyed that. I didn't read the book, but I don't know why we've kind of gone off on movies now. But I'm all up for
Oh,
that if
movies
you
are
are.
cool. Well, with Keanu Reeves, no, it wasn't Keanu Reeves. That was the day the Earth stood still, I think. But was it Tom Cruise in The War of the Worlds? That's some uh, that's some great acting where he's looking up in the intersection at that thing, and I was like, yes, that's the reaction that you would have if you saw that. I was like, that's perfect, perfect.
I know people give Tom Cruise a hard time, but I like him as an actor. I really do. I enjoy his projects, and I agree with you. I thought that was pretty good acting, but there was also the worst acting I'd ever seen out of anybody in that movie. Craig Bierko, who was in the 13th Floor that I mentioned, he was
Mm,
so brilliant in that movie because you play a dual role in that movie. Gretchen Rowe, Armin Mueller-Stahl, the Allstate guy. Oh, I'm drawing a blank on
mm,
Dennis Hasbert. Also
mhm.
was in that, but Craig Bierko was so brilliant. But I think that was Roland Emmerich's ability to direct and put someone into the right headspace to act it so well. But anything else I've seen Craig Bierko in, he's like, oh my God, why would anybody hire you for a movie?
Yeah, I've taken a delved into script writing a little. Nothing successful yet, but it's interesting how different that is from regular writing, where it's just more of instructions or suggestions to a director. And then I didn't realize how much it mattered who the actor was. And by actor, I mean actor, actress, but where you can see some things and go, man, that's really terrible. Why is it? Are they trying? Was the direction to make it look like you're acting? Because that's what it looks like. It looks like a community theater where it's like sell that you think you're acting. And
Yeah.
it's,
In the right movie, that might make sense, but 99.999 ad infinitum movies, no, you don't want that. And you're right. I've got my book Terror Strikes coming soon to a city near you up on storyrocket.com, hoping someone will turn that into a movie. But yeah, I mean, the writings are completely different. And it's why, people don't understand it. Based on a book, well, a book usually has a whole lot more space to do a lot of different things. Movie adaptations are usually just small chunks of a book because it's a different telling medium.
I like the mind exercise of it. Like if you're talking about doing a physical workout where you think this week or this few months I'm doing powerlifting and then I'm concentrating on cardio, and you rotate through it so you don't get bored with it. Then I like trying different types of writing, not with the idea that I'm going to be a Hollywood movie writer, but just with, let me try this and see what this is like. What does this do for the way I think and my other writing, I guess. But I do like script writing because you can talk yourself through regular life like that. Like you go exterior, night, grocery store, and then you go into Publix, so it's, I like the idea of it, and it's easier, maybe not easier. It's less writing than writing, but maybe more picturing than writing, or maybe
Mhm.
just a stripped down version of that. I'm not sure
Yeah.
yet.
Two things
What,
on that. My writings, I write a book like I'm seeing a movie, which is different. It just happens to be my style because most of my writings come to me through a dream. So it's like I've seen the book as a movie, and then I write the book kind of more like a movie style, although obviously not writing it as a script, but laid out like I would envision it as a movie. And then the other thing, like you said about the actor or actress making a potential big difference, I think of Back to the Future and the hit it was with Michael J. Fox when the role was cast originally with Eric Stoltz, and the film was almost all in the can when Michael J. Fox, whom they envisioned the role for in the first place, came available and they brought him in and reshot all the scenes because I've seen outtakes, and I mean, it looks okay with Eric Stoltz, but it they just knew there was a spark missing. And Michael J. Fox and Emmett Brown, oh, I love him from
Doc Brown?
Taxi. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Who? What, oh, I can't think of his name. God, I'm having all kinds of mental blocks today. But him anyway, the old guy with the gray hair. Yeah.
The doctor from Back to the Future. Yeah.
Yes.
He was
Yes.
in some
Yes.
Star Trek movies too. Yeah.
Right, right. I love him. Christopher Lloyd. There it is.
Yeah.
Finally. I knew if I stalled long enough it'd come to me. I love him. I'll see anything he's in. But the chemistry between those two really took that to another level.
Yeah. I've seen those outtakes of the other guy. It just seemed like he was too refined or too classically trained or too big for the part, something like that. Like you looked at him and you go, oh, I'm getting ready to look at some Shakespeare type stuff. And you want the Michael J. Fox feel.
Right.
We just watched the new True Detective like last week. We went through that with Jodie Foster and the boxer lady. I can't remember her name, but I am always shocked at how much Michael J. Fox and Jodie Foster look alike. They have to be related.
Somewhere in the DNA pile, they're tree branches from, yeah.
Yeah, they have to be related. It's like looking at Brad Pitt and who's the guy that's the director now? That was the big actor. Man, can't remember his name. He was in the prison movie, The Last Castle, with James Gandolfini.
I know who you're talking
Yeah,
about, but again,
big deal
yeah.
guy. But he's him and Brad Pitt look so similar when you look at them in their appropriate age. You got to Benjamin Button it a little, and you
Yeah,
take him
yeah.
back to 30 years old, Brad Pitt at 30 years old, and
Well,
it's
that's
like,
like
wow, that's how you make it in Hollywood. You got to look like the best actor or actress that's going on right now.
well, that's how what I think it was Natalie Portman got, or no, uh, what was the one in the Pirates movie? Keira Knightley. Keira Knightley got her start as a double for Natalie Portman in the Star Wars movies. Or was it Star Wars, or what am I thinking of? But anyway, that's because they look so much alike when they were
They do look
at that.
alike. I think in my
Yeah.
head, I think they're the same person. Because if somebody said, was Natalie Portman in Pirates of the Caribbean, I'd say, yeah, sure she was.
Right.
Which one
Yeah.
was Domino?
That one doesn't ring a bell.
It's the one with Mickey Rourke and I think that was Padme.
Yeah,
No,
I don't know that one.
you just I think we might have slid into an alternate dimension and then come back because I could have sworn they were the same person. I'm gonna have to do some research on that now. But we just saw one of her, let's see, Natalie Portman's movie that November that's on Netflix.
Mm.
Oof. Mm. Don't recommend it, but I'm not a critic or anything. I'm just the person that watches movies. And I mean, we did watch the whole thing, but the music, I don't understand the choice of music. I don't understand it. It's not like Lady Hawk where it has that Queen type heavy guitar in a medieval setting where you go, this is a little weird, but I'm going to watch it because of Rutger Hauer and Matthew Broderick. And great movie. I like Lady Hawk. But this one, the piano music was just so loud and so weird. And so it made me think, are they trying to make this a B movie? But yeah,
I'm
no.
glad you brought that up because Roland Emmerich spoke about that, and I've always thought there's an over reliance on soundtrack in a
Hmm.
lot of films. And I forget what movie it was, but one of his movies, he was going to try to do basically, I forget the official term, not soundtrack, but the
The score,
underlying, the score. There we go. Thank I God, I'm having such a mental block today.
you're
Right.
doing it. You're doing it.
He was going to do it score free. He wanted the picture to stand for itself and make the
Hmm.
point. There's an over reliance, but they did tests, of course, and it all came back negative because we're so reliant. There are so many people that seem to require music to help set the mood for them. The guy's crying. You don't understand. This is a sad scene. You need sad music. I don't get that, but it's the way the industry is now.
Well, it's like watching that Louis C.K. show without the laugh track, and they're just doing jokes and saying funny things, and nobody's laughing, and you're like, "Ooh, this is not going over well." I mean, I imagine you'd get the same thing if you watch something like Seinfeld without the laughing. That you just go, "Huh," hmm? And then you laugh. But you got to laugh with other people. I think. I don't know. There's something to it, and then just the tone. The tone of the movie is the tone of the movie is the music of the movie.
And
I,
and
I
again,
like
to go sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. Go
Uh,
ahead.
Yeah, to go back to what I said earlier too, movie making is obviously a different kettle of fish than book writing. Uh,
Mhm.
you've got that hour 15 to 2 hour 15 or 3 hours if you're being ridiculous like a Titanic movie to to fit so much in on that screen. And in a way, music kind of helps create a shortcut in some of that, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're all musical beings somehow. Somehow that's woven into us, whether you go with the idea of everything has a vibration to it and that's how you're attracted to certain things is just by the vibration. I don't know,
I'm
still thinking about all that, but
I'm
there are
glad
times. Go ahead.
I'm glad you brought that up. Like I love like watching Science or History Channel or whatever, and like the episodes on mechanical resonance. Like if you think
Mm.
about the Bible and the trumpets bringing down the walls, well, it wasn't the trumpet per se; it was the right elevated frequency. It's like the old Memorex commercial. Is it live or is it Memorex? Where they put the glass next to the speaker and the glass shatters because it's the right resonance, the right
Mhm.
tone, the right frequency, and everything has a frequency. It's like going back to kind of religion, not to go there specifically, but the Buddhist Om, and you look at the old tapestries and the design associated with Buddhism, and modern science is determined through the metallic plates, and you put sand on it, you put that tone Om through it, and it makes that pattern.
Mhm.
And that was brought to mind thousands and thousands years ago, long before any concept of mechanical resonance by humanity was understood.
Yeah, by current humanity.
Right.
There might have been some other humanity here before us that we just don't know about. Yeah, it's interesting. There's definitely something to the sound.
Yep.
The For movies, like there's some striking movies I remember the beginning of where I'm just like, wow, that's pretty good. And Ridley Scott has a few of those where it has the music and the panoramic views, like in the beginning of Prometheus. That when I was sitting in the movie theater back in the day when I went to movie theaters, watching that one, and you have the huge screen and the sound, and you're just flying through this primordial earth, and you're like, wow, this is going to be something. Hope this is going to be good. And the
Yeah.
movie was okay. The opening I liked a whole lot better than the rest of the movie, but the rest of the movie was still good. I'm not saying it's bad, but
Sometimes the concept is better than the actual delivered product. I get where you're coming from there. Not that it's bad, just that I thought this could have been a little better. I don't know how, can't put my finger on it, but it could have been better. And I do still go to the movies. In fact, last night I was at the theater seeing Argyle for the third time. I love that movie.
is that which is that the one with the cat?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Everybody knows it is the cat movie. Exactly. Oh, it is great. A lot of
Uh,
action, of course, some good humor, a little bit of drama. And being the author of Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You, it's a political thriller. That's a spy thriller. They're different, but and again, Dallas Bryce Howard, I like her, and she plays an author. I won't give spoilers. I love the tagline. Once you know the secret, don't let the cat out of the bag. Great
mm,
tagline because it's known
mm.
as the cat movie. But yeah, I don't want to give spoilers, but she plays an author at the beginning of the movie. So I appreciated it from that aspect, being an author. And I also do a podcast, the Constitutionalist Politics podcast. And my last show, as of this taping, is on AI. Since we're talking writing and movies, uh,
Mhm.
the moral and ethical questions of people lifting things or using AI to produce something and call it their own, to me, is dishonest. And we're starting to see a lot of that. To me, that's a form of plagiarism.
I go back to that Colonel Saul Tigh Battlestar Galactica quote again of the you point your finger back far enough, the germ gets blamed for splitting in two. Is how much of a level do you want to take that to? Like, is our gut biome saying this person walking around thinking these are this person's ideas? It's really the gut biome ideas that are going on here. So I wonder if we're just that to the computer. We're just a couple prompts and we're like, hey, what do you think about this, this, this? You know, how about a picture of this with these elements in this style? And then they just do it. And how is what the computer is different? How is what the computer is doing, for lack of a better word, computer, any different than how a human synthesizes things? We bring in ideas or see things or whatever, and then we think we create stuff out of that.
And
Isn't
of
that what the
course,
computer's doing?
yeah, and of course, we are the ones that coded these things. So
Mm-hmm.
they are a derivative of ourselves. And being a former IT guy, the thing that worries me, of course, is the old term GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. These AIs are only as good as the data mining source they're deriving from. And
Right.
like the latest SAG after strike, which I didn't buy, I think it was a legitimate one of the concerns, was over image licensing, right? Like Bruce Willis, now that he has health problems, actually signed an image contract. So his image can go in perpetuity in movies and his family will benefit from it financially. Whereas others are concerned their likeness will be lifted without permission and used by AI because, and there's two great movies on that. I'm not sure. You probably saw Simone or Sim 1 with Al Pacino.
I know about it. I may have seen part of it.
Oh, great movie. But before
Okay.
that, 1981, Susan Day of the Partridge Family and Albert Finney, there was a movie called Looker that was way ahead of its time, saw this coming, about getting perfect looking actresses and scanning them for their image and them then getting killed off and their images continue to be used in perpetuity. Oh, love that movie, Looker, way ahead of its time. Simone or Sim1, however you wish to pronounce it, because it's spelled S1M0NE.
Hmm.
Love those movies. Being an IT guy and a writer and a lover of movies, I thought that was great. But you know, at the end of the day, the SAG after thing was like it always is about money.
Hmm.
Bottom line money. And I say to a Fran Drescher, you're worried about people behind the camera? Give up some of your salary. You know, I'm tired of these communists talking about, you know, corporate greed when they're making millions. Give up some of your millions to help these other lowly people you pretend to care about.
Hmm. I don't know enough about the situation to talk about it any, I guess, or with any authority. I mean, I'll still talk about it. I just have no authority on it.
Yeah, well, I knew someone who was a SAG after member. He's kind of a D-list actor, you know,
Is that in
but
his
not.
resume? Because I would put it on mine.
Oh.
D-list actor.
Yeah, but he quit SAG after when they went on strike. He's like, no, I'm out of here.
Hmm.
You're not really doing anything for me anyway. And like he said, he agrees with me. Most of their demands were bogus. It's all, you know, and I've been a union member. Uh, I've been on both sides of the bargaining table. The union throws shit that they ask for that they know they're never going to get in order to get some of the other things they prefer. And of course, the businesses all plead broke and, you know, try to get as low a common denominator in a contract that they can get. So I understand all that, you know.
Yeah, I was a union president. I think the errors I made, I don't think they are errors really, was I was honest about what I thought the union needed and the reason for it existing. So I didn't throw in a bunch of extra things. It was more of this is actually what we think. And a union, in my experience, can be corrupted as quickly as a business. So
Oh,
if you have a
absolutely.
corrupt union dealing with a corrupt business, what do you expect is going to come out?
Yeah,
So
that's why I got out of unions first chance I could get. Unfortunately, like so many things, they're infiltrated by bad actors,
yeah,
and it becomes to the union bosses. They don't, there's a strike fund, but like we got to do anything to avoid using it. It's their slush fund, right? The union bosses are only concerned about their slush fund for their use and what they're paid, not really the workers. I got out as quickly as I could in the hotel industry at the time that I was in. But like I said, I've been on both sides of the table. So, yeah, unfortunately, there's not enough honest people like you involved.
I mean, I try to be honest. Um, Writing. Where do you do most of your writing?
uh, well, in my How to Write a Book Hints, Tips, and Techniques, uh, for people who are considering writing their own book, I go into nowadays you can write anytime, any place. I'm single, I'm divorced. So if the spirit hits me at 3 in the morning, I get up and I hop on my laptop. But my hint or tip and technique in my book is that if you're driving along and you've got an idea, pull off to the side of the road, open your phone app if you got a smartphone, and dictate yourself an email, like with Siri and Alexa and Google Assistant. Now you can dictate yourself an email anywhere, and whenever you have a thought, get it down, email it to yourself, and then when you have time to sit around and actually put not pen to paper anymore, but key fingers to keyboard, you could cut and paste it and then clean it up.
How do you deal with when you get so much like this big pile of information, all these notes you've compiled, and then it starts to seem like too much? How do you organize that?
Well, that's an important question. In How to Write a Book and Get It Published, Hints, Tips, and Techniques, my first main chapter is about the uh, it is notes, an outline, if you will, right? You need to have an outline document that you put your notes into, your thoughts, so you have a structure. If you have an idea for a particular 2, 3 lines of dialogue that need to go, put that in your show notes, your outline first before you start digging into actually writing your chapters. And then if you need to move things around, save the old one, create a new one, move it around. And if you like it, then okay, save that. It's your new one. Then go to the book and move the things around. So you've got a guideline, a guidepost to go from, but everybody's style is different. Some people just sit down, start typing, and bam, they nail it out beginning the end without that. And some I know still use 3x5 cards, you know, write things on 3x5 cards because then you can rearrange and shuffle them around like a deck of cards to then follow.
Ian McGowan, I think that's his name, has some YouTube videos where he talks about writing, and they're short little couple-minute videos. And one of them he's talking about when he's writing poetry, where he'll write it on a piece of paper and then work it on there and cross some things out and rework it. And the reason he does it is because on a piece of paper you can see what you've gotten rid of, but on a computer, once you've deleted it or changed it, it's gone. So then I think that would make so many more documents like I'm writing a book and this is what I'm doing today. And then I do some edits on it. And now I got to keep a copy from today and then today or yesterday, today. And then you're just piling that up, knowing that you'll probably never go back and look at those other copies. But
Right.
if you have it on the piece of paper, you might not go back and look at it either. His thing was you cross it out and you always keep the crossing outs. That's his quote. You always keep the crossing outs because that might be the start of the next thing.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I don't go into this in how to write a book, hints, tips, and techniques. But what do you delete versus what on the computer you use the strike through option?
Mm-hmm.
So it would be the same thing, right? You know, I think I want to delete and replace this. So let's strike through. So I'm not destroying it. I'm keeping it and then adding, because then later you may decide you're right. You know what? That other way was actually better, or a combination of those two need to be the third way that makes it better.
It's strange the comfort you have when you keep all those old things, knowing that you'll probably never go back and look at them. But I equate it to like the older computers back in the day of, CD backslash to get into the computer, where you defrag the hard drive every now and then, and you just hear the sound of the computer doing its thing, and that to me is kind of like I would be doing if I was going through and looking at all the things I'd crossed out on a piece of paper or some file that I had it because I've used the strike through before, and reading it and having lost some things I've written before where I've saved it and then there was a computer problem and it wasn't there. Then you have that Hemingway effect. He wrote that book about that where the lady burned his copy of his novel he was working on. But I know that feeling of losing it and I don't want to lose it, but I also feel the weight of 3,000 emails that I've sent to myself with different ideas that are just sitting in there that I'm never going to go through. So you got to pick which one you're going to deal with, which one you're going to live with.
Information overload or information underload.
Yeah.
Not really a term, but yeah, being a former IT guy, I hear you. Yeah, backup, backup, backup. But today with the cloud, I have 3 backups basically of everything. Because an IT guy, as the saying goes, if you have 1 backup, you have 0 backups. Because anything can happen to that tape or that
Yep.
that DVD, right? So I back up to 2 external hard drives and to the Acronis backup cloud, my entire system. Plus, I have other things like my manuscript folder and my thelibertybeacon.com that I write for folder back up to the Norton cloud. So
Mm.
back up and then let me grab it. I get right the old flash drive. So some things I've got like 10 copies of, just in case. But like
Yeah.
you said, I also go into how to write a book, hints, and get it published, hints, tips, and techniques. Do your chapters separate. Then later, when you're ready, cut and paste those into a final rough draft document
Mm.
so that your chapters, uh, chapter whatchamacallit, V1, chapter whatchamacallit, V2, V3,
Mm.
right? So then, like you said, and then when your book's done, if you need hard drive space, go back and delete all those old ones you don't use anymore or offload them to a DVD. Don't permanently delete them without saving them to something first. Because as you know, it's like the old, I forget they're becoming their parents commercial now, right? The guy with the molding. I've kept this molding because I don't
Mm.
you never know when you're going to need it. And the guy says, I do. You're never going to need it. But the minute, right, you get rid of something, it's like, oh, damn, I need that now.
Yeah. I've had that feeling happen a couple times where you throw it away and then the next day you're like, that's where I would have used that right there. It would have been perfect. And then you have to go out and buy it again. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
It's I think that's just how the program of life is written.
If we're actually living a life and not in the matrix, right? To go back
Yeah.
to movies. Yeah.
I mean, the simulation makes all the sense in the world to me. There's what can you do about it, even if you knew you were in a simulation? Probably nothing. And then it becomes the question of why are you in a simulation? Are you in a simulation because it's a prison, because you chose to be here and you're trying to learn something, because whatever other of a couple different reasons. So
that that
I
is
think you
more.
can look at the simulation theory and you can match it up with religion, and it's just the words that are different. I mean, you're saying the same thing. We live in a world that's created by an intelligent design. Okay, simulation. We're living in a world that's created by intelligent design. So what are you going to call it? Versus, you still have the ultimate question of what created this, what created that, what created this. So you're going through all the same things. But
Chicken
I
or
think
the egg, yeah.
yeah, I think the egg, because the chicken lays the egg and then that egg is mutated somehow different from that original chicken, so that other egg is the new chicken, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
the egg that came first,
But your
but
premise,
then who made the chicken?
your premise about simulation is exactly the premise of Roland Emmerich's The 13th Floor. Uh,
Oh, okay.
the guy, uh, Craig, is it Craig? Yeah, Craig Bierko discovers he's in a simulation. They themselves create the simulation creates a simulation. Oh, just a great, based on the book Simulacron 3 that was written in the 60s. Again, something so far ahead of its time. And you think today, Sim City, the Sims don't know they're in a sim. Now imagine virtual reality goggles where you get to download yourself into your Sim City and interact with them. That's the 13th floor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have to check that one out. I thought there was a TV show called that, but maybe they
Yeah,
based that on the movie or something.
no, that
Different?
completely
Different.
different. Yeah.
Okay.
That was a horror film or series, I
Hmm.
think. Yeah, nothing to do with the movie.
Okay. Good to note. All right. So writing, when you're keeping track of your notes and you're getting everything straight, what type of writing do you do the most?
Well, I'm the holder of more than 3 dozen copyrights. I've written, all kinds of everything, including written and recorded music back in the 70s and 80s. My dad, Ted Leonard Jr., was the founder of the Polka Kings. So his lasting legacy is 3 albums, or 8 tracks back then, if you prefer. But I've got the vinyl albums. And I was never good enough to get a record deal. So, but I kept writing. And now, as a internationally published author, I have my legacy, but I have him. I owe the creative gene of being a creative for that.
Hmm. Where do you think that creativity? How do you visualize creativity? Like, do you think it's a thing that's out there somewhere and you just tap into it, or is it something inside of you or something you manifest? What's your ideas on that?
Well, like I said, for me, and everybody's different, obviously, but for me, most everything I've written, most, not everything, but most everything including my music, came to me through dreams. So it is indeed like its own entity, and it's nice enough to give me things.
Hmm, nice. Do you see it or visualize it in a place like when you're not engaged with it? Is it somewhere else waiting? How do you visualize the world of creativity?
I've
Have
not
you?
Yeah, no, not really. Because again, for each person, I think it's kind of a different thing. Uh, One's own life experience. Uh, some people, life imitating art, art imitating life. Some people are really just borrowing from reality and creating a fictional version. Whereas, again, with me, my original material comes to me through dreams. Uh, Everybody is a little different, so I couldn't quite put my finger on that in any definitive sense.
Hmm. Have you done collaborative writing?
A little, not a lot. It gets a little more difficult. But to go back to the creativity, there is a difference between the right left brain thing, whether one is more right brained or left brained, more creative, more emotional, more artistic, as opposed to the other brain, whichever hemisphere controls which. I don't remember, doesn't matter, don't care. Uh, that is more logical and, type thinking. So there is something to that. There's definitely something to genetics and DNA and the human chemistry involved in that.
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder when, and I guess it's different for everyone, is when that creativity that you're born with, either the creativity, the connection to it, or natural curiosity, when that starts to get sectioned off or partitioned, if you want to think of it in a computer sense, or somehow ignored for whatever the trappings of life are. And that's when you start to develop people, or people start to develop more creative versus more of this
Yeah.
world, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Jodie Foster before, so let me use her as a segue, as a quasi wordplay joke. It has to be fostered, right?
Mm,
Nature versus nurture. Uh, that's why arts are part of schools. We need to create thinking people, but indeed some are more creative, and we don't want to shut that down in children. We want to encourage that, but we need more thinkers than creatives for society to really function. If everybody's trying to sell artwork, the economy isn't going to function too well.
yeah. It does seem like, though, that society wants, when it gets to a certain size, it wants less thinkers, or thinkers that only think to a certain extent. And then that's it. Like, the curiosity gets stamped out, and you don't want to know why. You just want to know and then go from there. Like, it's interesting to be able to talk to people like that, that don't have the curiosity of, well, why did this happen, or what brought this on, or it's just more of, I guess, as you hear a lot of people say, of living in the moment, but that moment is gone before you recognize it.
Well, not to get political, but bread and circus. Uh, Tyrants will always want dumbed down citizens, right? Those who crave power prefer a dumb citizenry. People who are consumed by bread and circus, they're a lot easier to control.
Hmm. Yeah, the unquestioning.
What time's the game on, right?
Yeah.
Which I have an article at thelibertybeacon.com called Occasional Distractions Not Only Okay, but Healthy. It's just those who are consumed, and I've had a recent Constitutionalist politics show on it called Bread and Circus also. It's just those who are consumed by the boob tube or whatever 24/7 that it becomes a problem. You need outlets. Like I said, I saw Argyle the third time last night. You
Hmm.
need distractions and deflections as long as you're not completely consumed by them and not paying attention to things that can and will hurt your ability to have a life, to have a roof over your head, to be able to put food on the table.
Yeah. You're in the simulation, so you got to deal with it, but you can still think about other things, but just not all the time. Yeah.
Yep.
So, with your experience in collaborative writing, what were the pros and cons of that?
Well, somebody still has to be that final decider, right? uh, there has to be a lead and other secondary collaborators. Otherwise, you all will always forever be beaten heads. Now, the obvious pro is you can be too close to your own work and not see something. Another set of eyes and another creative can bring some additional wonderful things into a project. Um, and the con, obviously, is the old too many chefs in the soup.
Hmm. Yeah, my experience with it, I co-wrote 2 books, and it was based on the premise of the other guy. So I did defer to him a lot because it was his initial thoughts. So I was like, well, that's where they came from, so let's just see how it works out. And then we traded writing chapters back and forth, but we still talked about things. Like we would talk about it in the beginning of just the broad strokes of the story, and then there becomes a time in there where you start the story unfolds a way that maybe you didn't think it was going to, but you just follow it, and then both people agree on it. Or then I've written chapters before where the other person would look at it and go, well, that's not really what happened. And you can't be so tied to it that you're not willing to say, okay, tell me what happened, and then just continue on from there. And then you just have that little, however much of writing that was just an exercise, but it's still in your head there somewhere. And I liked the collaborative writing because writing does get lonely, and it's nice to be able to talk to somebody about it while you're still in that phase of it forming. And it also made me look forward to writing on my own, because then it was like, look how much faster I'm going to be able to go because I can do this, this, and this. But I think it goes back to that trying different things in writing to just see how it affects the rest of your writing. It's
Mhm.
worthwhile, I think, for
No, that's
people to do some
important.
collaborative writing.
You're kind of helping to expand your own abilities and horizons for your solo work. And another pro is obviously you're sharing and spreading. Oh, I hear the fur baby now.
Yeah, yeah. Some golfers
you're
got too close.
Oh, that's great. I love that. That's great. Uh, Give her a hug for me when you're done. But anyway, you're spreading the risk in that too. But collaborative, even if you're not taking on official collaboratives, you need to share your process and your work with family and friends and let them also, because again, you can be too close to your work and you need other eyeballs. And, it's like, what if they don't get what you're saying? Right? You need somebody to point that out early on. It's like, oh, okay, I guess I better reword that uh, rather than release a book and it's a major flop because a bunch of reviews are like, we have no clue what the guy's point is. Yeah.
When you write on your own, do you have somebody that you like set, maybe not the first draft, but like the third or fourth draft that you get to look at just to see if it's tracking?
I share the outline. Again,
Mm.
going back to the outline, that's your start. Is this story at all interesting to anybody? And that's another in how to write a book and get it published in tips and techniques. You got to have a thick skin, though, too. Remember, not everybody's going to like your stuff. Not everybody's going to get your stuff. I have a reviews chapter that talk. You got to have a thick skin. You're going to get some negative feedback. Now, if you get 100 instances of the same negative feedback, then you better pay attention, because then there's something to that. But the one-offs, well, I don't really like it. Well, I guess this really wasn't for you, right?
Yeah, I got a 3-star review on a. It's actually one of the books that co-wrote with another guy, and I got it from my father-in-law, who said he's not really into science fiction. So I should have taken that as he's not interested in reading it. And for whatever reason, he did read it, and then his review was 3 stars, and he said it was a good science fiction book, but he didn't understand the ending. And I said, next time I saw him, what do you think happened? And he explains, and I was like, yeah, you understand the ending. It's all right there. You got it. So I don't know. It's
Yeah.
the people closest to you that hurt the most, I guess. But
At
it's
times, yeah. Now, like I have terrorstrikes.info as one of my sites, and you could go to terrorstrikes.info/reviews, because, of course, most people think Amazon, but there's Barnes and Noble, there's Books a Million, there's Goodreads, there's Bigfoot, there's all kinds of places reviews can be. So I try to bring them all under that one terrorstrikes.info/reviews,
that's a good idea.
including a couple negative reviews, because again, I deal in reality and I'm honest. And if you put those negative reviews on your site and you think they're unwarranted, you can respond to them. Like, one person was a troll. I've encountered him across social media all the time. He didn't read my book. He's just there to attack me. And I turned his review into a joke. And it helped me sell more books, because everybody understood what was going on. And it was just a Saul Alinsky ad hominem personal attack on
Mm.
me rather than my book. But another reviewer, I had kind of dueling reviews. One person, because you can have dialogue style or you can have descriptive narrative style. I'm more the descriptive narrative style. And I interviewed Liz Enton on my Constitutionalist Politics show the other day, and we brought that up too. She's more of a dialoguer, and the person reviewed my book said there wasn't enough dialogue. Well, nowhere on the planet or during any interview have I ever said and tried to mislead anyone into thinking I was that kind of an author. So you made the assumption and you didn't like it because there wasn't enough of what you hoped would be in the book. Now, tell
Mm.
me what you think about the concept of the book, though. Okay, I get it. You would have liked more dialogue. I just don't write that way. Whereas Liz does write that way. And I had a dueling uh, reviewer was kind enough to then write with that very point. Look, if you misunderstood what you were buying, that isn't the author's fault. And some books like The Great Gatsby, there isn't one line of dialogue in it. So there are the different and competing styles. So you can't judge the one author on your preference because they don't write the style you would prefer. So I thought that was really, really nice of that counter reviewer kind of to step in on my behalf of saying, "What are you talking about? That's not his fault. That's your fault."
Yeah, it's good to have the defined differences. Some would call that polarizing, but it's goes along the lines of having the thick skin so you can hear what people say and then take into account what you can work into your style. But it is a mistake, I think, to try to make everybody happy.
Oh,
That
you
then your
can't.
style just falls all apart. You got to
Yeah.
keep your style. And if your style is strange and it's just strange, I mean, if you like it, somebody else is going to like it. You just have to find that person, and you
Yeah,
might never. But
there are how many billions of people on the planet now? Uh, yeah, a monkey at the typewriter, several monkeys at the typewriter, as the old joke goes. Eventually, you'll get a novel out of it, right? And there will be a market for it. out of all the billions of people on the planet. The problem, of course, is marketing and promotion. How do you make those who would like your, in your kind of words, weird style? How
Mhm.
do you get marketed out to them so they understand, hey, you'll like this book because it's weird. You're weird. You like weird. This is weird. Give this one a try.
Yeah. Marketing definitely works. How do you good marketing does. How do you market yours?
Well, in How to Write a Book and Get It Published, Hints, Tips, and Techniques, there's a chapter on marketing. Now, obviously, never before in the history of mankind has marketing and promotion been more readily available to people for free, given the advent of social media, right? Obviously, number one, there's where you start. And then there's various other things that have costs associated with them. And you look at those costs and your ROI potential on those advertising options. But obviously, uh, the downside of that is, of course, with not everybody's on social media, but with all the proliferation of, shall we just say, garbage. And again, I mean, everybody's definition of what they would say is gold versus garbage is going to be different, but you're competing with so many people blasting so much stuff all day, every day. Uh, but since it's free, you can't pass it.
Right.
I don't get that. I get that, like, I'm on 15 different platforms, and I'll see people on, you know, whatchamacallit, social media, just not to use the name. And oh, I love whatchamacallit social media. I'm only on whatchamacallit social media. It's the only place I'll be. Really? Why do you want to censor, using it figurative sense, yourself?
Yeah.
Why do you want to limit your own reach? Why not say that same thing on a dozen different platforms to reach different audiences? I don't get that thought process, but you know, a lot of people just have that, hey, I'm loyal to whatchamacallit social media.
Yeah. My restriction comes down to time. It's how much time do I have to put into putting things on social media. And with writing, I don't really advertise it. With the podcast, I put it on Instagram and YouTube, X, and Spotify. And there's tons of others I could do. It's just to the point now where if you're just one person, you got to scale it to a point where you can keep up with it and it still checks the same reasons you started doing it. Like, is it
Yeah.
still fun? Are you still getting out of it what you wanted to get out of it? Or has it turned into more of a job? And if it's a job, then that's fine. That's what it's turned into, if that's what you want. So how do you deal with publishing and marketing for writing versus your YouTube, or not YouTube, but your podcasting?
Well, in the one complements the other. Uh, like Constitutionalist Politics podcast, the show, I just drop every Saturday, an occasional special midweek here and there, if I have an interview that I do with someone. But so I just do that once a week, and it's meant to complement my writing. It's a marketing and promotion in and of itself. I
Hmm.
reach different people. It can help me sell books. And of course, there is a Constitutionalist Politics. You can see there on the screen, my third international book based on the podcast helps sell the show. The show helps sell the book, and back and forth. But social media, pick a browser you normally wouldn't use. Brave, Opera, whatever. Maybe you're not a Microsoft fan, so you don't use Edge. But pop up Edge and put each of the dozen platforms of social media you belong to all in a row on that browser and use it as your social media browser only. That's it. That's all you use it for. And when you compose something for X, you just copy it, paste it into the other platforms, send, 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 send. Takes you 2 extra seconds, but you're blasting a dozen places.
How'd you get started in podcasting?
I was on a show to talk about terror strikes coming soon to a city near you. And he had me back a second time, then a third time, then a fourth time. So then he decided, hey, would you be interested in co hosting? Because I had a friend, Darlene, who had always said, with your mind, you should be on the radio. And I've always been involved with talk radio as a caller, right? I would never do a show myself. But he said, why don't you co host? So, it's like, yeah, duh, right? Why not? And so after a couple of years of that, uh, I felt where I gotten good enough, able to do it, and I do a pre-recorded as opposed to live. That's a whole other animal, right? And so I pre-record shows and drop them, like I said, every Saturday. It just became a natural progression for me.
What was the topic of that first show you were co-hosting?
Well, at the time, it was the Patriot Angle, which was mainly American politics show, but he branched into general variety show, and so talked to all kinds of people from all over about all kinds of subjects. And I decided, like I said, then to go kind of back to my roots, constitutionalist politics, being Christian based US Constitution politics. And my focus then stays narrow. And, just dropping once a week is very manageable, right? I would never do a show. Like his show is like 3 times a week now, and I think that's just you're stretched and strained for content sometimes. Like these people who do shows 5 days a week, sometimes they're phoning it in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to have a broader topic to be able to do more of it. I think that was my initial biggest stress of starting a podcast was how do you remain consistent and you pick a topic, number one, that you can talk about and you like to talk about. So creativity worked for me. And then you have to figure out what's my format going to be? How am I going to find people to talk to about it? And again, that was my biggest stress was if I have one show a week, what happens if I'm planning on it and then the person cancels? How am I going to deal with that? What am I going to have for backup? And how did you deal with all those things?
Well, my show is a monologue show. I can have a 20-minute, 30-minute, 45-minute, an hour-long monologue episode. Uh,
Okay.
What is a constitutionalist? Each week, more or less, has to do with some aspect of what makes one a Christian based member and believer and supporter of the U.S. Constitution. And the other thing, too, is obviously start slow and build, right?
Yeah.
You can start off once a month and go to once a week and 3 times, but you never want to contract because you look like you're losing. You're not going to get audience, right? If I'm going to do a weekly at 5 days a week, and then you lose steam, you're not building audience, you drop down to 3 or once a week, you look like a dead show. You don't want to do that. You always want to be building. So I branched into doing interviews and I drop them as specials midweek.
Okay.
So I keep my monologue every Saturday, and I bring guests on for like the last one I had on. What was the last one I had on? I've had Peter Seraphin, an author, on, Liz Enton, an atheist, talking about the afterlife. I thought, I'm a Christian show. Let's bring on an atheist. Won't that be fun? Yeah.
Hmm.
And it was a great show. So I had her back. In fact, the second half of my AI show that I've recently dropped on Constitutionalist Politics podcast, Liz is in the second segment of that. But normally my interviews I'll drop as a whole separate special. I had a Valentine special, obviously, about a person who's a specialist on love connections, so to speak, and that. So I've branched off and will do more standalone interviews to throw in there as specials, not really changing, but again, building on what I had and expanding.
How do you go about scheduling when you have guests?
Uh, I have not signed up for Calendly. I know most
Yeah.
people use Calendly to schedule and keep it straight. I do it the old fashioned way. Uh, you know,
Hmm.
physical calendar. I write them on my physical calendar, and then also you can see my printout of the hump date calls from Matchmaker FM, where we came across each other. I printed out your profile, so I put it on my physical calendar. I also write the date on a printout of a profile of a guest or a show that I'm going to be a guest on. So I kind of have a bit of a backup. Uh, but even then, every once in a while, something will fall through the cracks and you double book accidentally or you forget a show. It's like, we're all human. It happens. But
Hmm.
yeah, I just write them down. I I don't do anything. Being an IT guy, you'd think I definitely would use something online, but I don't. But I use
Yeah.
Zoom to record my show. So Zoom also provides its own calendar in and of itself. Like, when
Mhm.
I set a date and time to bring on a guest, I immediately set up the Zoom. So that's a third reminder in a way. Hey, you're supposed to record with so and so.
What do you use for distributing the podcast after it's done? Is it a
I
video and
I
audio?
I Well, my show is audio only. I'm housed on Buzzsprout, but
Okay.
I, of course, through RSS feed, am on iHeart, TuneIn, Spotify, Audible. I mean, 15 platforms. You can find Constitutionalist Politics podcast almost anywhere podcasts can be found, right? But I'm housed on Buzzsprout. Uh, I do, however, have YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, and Brighteon channels that, like I say, I use Zoom. So I record all my shows that I then make an audio feed out of, and I put those videos up on the video channels as behind the scenes sneak peek episodes.
Okay.
So
How
you
do
can
you
see the sausage being made.
yeah. How do you like, or what's the difference in your experience from YouTube and Rumble?
Not a whole lot. I've had things indeed censored on YouTube. Nope, pull it down, or we're you know uh, completely deleting your channel. So I've had to take a few things off, but YouTube has been fairly good to me. But what isn't there, everything I have is at Rumble. I have never had one iota of a hint of attempted censorship at Rumble, BitChute, or Brighteon.
Hmm. What type of equipment did you use when you first started? Have
Well,
you
yeah,
upgraded or changed it?
well, I've upgraded. I've got a good gamer headset with the built-in mic. I still don't have the several $1,000 professional mic and mixer. Although
Hmm.
I have a mixer because my dad again had a
Polka
band.
Kings.
Yeah, in my had a band. So I DJ'd for a while, so I've got the equipment. I just haven't put it together. I would need a podcaster quality professional microphone to run it through, but for now, I just use a couple $100 Corsair gamer headset. It's good enough.
Hmm.
The quality, the headsets are great. The Dolby quality are great, but it's the microphones that are still a little lacking. I think it's a little tinny at times, but I think it's good enough to work. And I just work off my laptop. Again, like I say on my podcast, you're no muss, no fuss, you know, broadcast, right? No fancy mega flashy inserts and all that. No, it's low key. It's meant to be that way, at least for starters, right? And when you build a bigger audience, then you can look at all that fancier stuff. But I only ever intend to be, low key kind of provider. Uh, it's not something I'm looking to make a living at. So I've not made that major investment in like others have.
Yeah, they do have a different feel with the higher production shows, and of the podcast I listen to regularly, I'd say most of them, almost all of them, are the smaller operations. It's not the big ones. The PBD podcast is probably the most produced one I watch, and then Joe Rogan is probably pretty well produced, but it doesn't seem like there's not a lot of people behind the scenes, putting topics together and all that. So I think I like the feel of that. It feels more authentic to me than anything else.
There's
But
a good, I was going to say honest, that would be the wrong
yeah,
word. I mean,
yeah,
but
honest is good.
yeah, authentic, I think, is the best word, genuine, real. Like I say in my opening of my show, it's just you, me, and an occasional guest.
Yeah,
Just that folksy kind of feel. But, there's a market for anything, right?
yeah. You're not dealing with the four or five other people that have agendas behind you trying to get you to talk about a certain thing. So I think that also would steer the conversation more, and you could tell that if you were watching it,
Right. Yeah.
unless it
Like
was.
my show, it's me. It's all me. The concepts, the writing, which my Constitutionalist Politics podcast corresponds every Saturday with a piece that I write for the libertybeacon.com. So they correspond with each other. So every week I write an article and I record a show. Nobody controls my content. It's all me. Every word of it, I don't use AI to cheat. Every word of it's mine. Oh, yeah, I embed videos in the online articles and that to help break it up. I call it today's twatter attention span, right?
Hmm.
People want some video and stuff. You can't have a 2,000 word article these days without breaking it up because people's attention spans just can't handle it. But yeah, again, no muss, no fuss. It's all me. I do the concepts, I do the recording, I do my own writing, I do my own editing, I do my own uploading. It's just me.
Yeah. How's it, besides all those things you just said, what are the big differences between co-hosting and hosting?
Oh, well, obviously, co-hosting, I was known as Jokester Joe. I get to be the sidekick. I just step in and fill in. Although, of course, if Michael needed to be somewhere, couldn't be there, he did have a producer. I would fill in and host a show. Uh, but as a co-host, obviously, you're not relying on only you. And that's the benefit of a host having a co host or even doing an interview show. Whereas my show, a monologue show, It's me, all me, nobody there to bail me out. Like
Yeah.
one of the shows I did, we started doing X live streams for a while, and Michael had to be somewhere else, so I was hosting the show, and we were to have on 2 guests, both of them a no-show. I
Mm,
was like, I don't say it's the worst show ever, but it's the most chaotic show ever, right? I'm creative enough that after the first guest didn't show, I could go for 15 minutes and talk about to try to fill to the second guest was supposed to show. But then when the second guest didn't show, it's like, okay, now I'm grasping.
mm. Yeah, I guess that is the big difference of the live stream is a stress I don't know because I record it and then put it on. I I think if you're doing a show, I've originally thought that it's just the stakes are higher in your head that this is live and I can't stop it if I wanted to. But if the biggest fear for me of a guest not showing up or you not having something to do for the show, then that would be even more compounded because you have the live thing and then the person doesn't show up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
you have that pressure. No safety net. So again, it wasn't a bad show. It was just rather chaotic. And in a way, I thought it was kind of a good, unique show because it shows the reality of, of life, of people, the radio, right? The radio's still out there. Those are live shows,
Mm.
usually, generally, right? I'm here in Michigan, Wham Radio. I call in as a caller all the time to the shows, and most of those are live shows. So you don't want dead air. You've got to keep talking. You've got to fill that time with
Yeah.
something, even if it's, talking about the weather for the umpteenth millionth time. You've got to keep talking.
With your with your own show, when you book guests, what's your percentage of success from people that you contact to see if they'll be on versus the amount of people you get that are on, like that do show
Well,
up, or
again,
that return your message?
my show is a niche show. I mean, right? Constitutionalist. I invented the term. People may not even grasp what it means, right? So it's a very niche show. So my return on outreach is pretty small. But again, my show is mainly indeed meant to be a weekly monologue drop. So I'm not reliant on it. I've gotten more and more people willing to come on the show so that I'm up to now like dropping 2 specials interviews a month. And
Mm,
like I said, I had Liz Enton on again the other day with the AI thing because she's an author, wrote a book, and she's in the process of doing an audio book for her book. So I thought I'd bring her on to talk about the honesty, the moral and ethical aspects, and the creative process of like constitutionalist politics you can get on Google Play exclusively. And I used an AI reader, right? Google Play. I used the voice of Mary. While it's a religious book, uh, obviously, Mary, the
yeah.
connection why I would use that voice. But that's the kind of book that AI can read it and it's okay. Whereas Terror Strikes or it's not the kind of book that you can let an AI read and it's good enough. I
Mm,
would need professional voice actors. I'd need 3, so I don't have an audio book for that because the cost to benefit, the ROI just isn't likely to be there. If you're a bigger name, Stephen King and all them, Patterson, Clancy, you put out audio books because they're big enough names. There's enough of a market for even an audio book. They're going to get the ROI. Whereas the average person publishing a few books here and there that isn't a household name, you just don't get the ROI to to go through that expense of doing it.
When you are preparing for your show, what do you do 1 week out versus 1 day out versus 1 hour out from recording? What's
Uh,
your what are the
well,
things you're planning?
Yeah, it depends on the week or the month. I mean, sometimes I can have 6 in a can already lined up and ready. I've got a rough draft of my article for 6 weeks out, the topic set. And like I say, my show and my TLB correspond and correlate. They're not identical. So I want people listening to the show to get something different and apart from what's in the article and vice versa, so that those listening to the show want to go to the article and those looking at the article want to come back and listen to the show to get additional things. But yeah, the show I then usually just do off the top of my head. Just hit Zoom and I'm off to the races because as I think your audience can tell, I can blab.
Hmm.
I'm never at a loss for words. I can just blab and blab and blab on just about any subject. But yeah, there are weeks that 3 days before Wednesday, I'm looking at, oh my God, what am I writing and recording about this week? Thankfully, that's few and far between. So it depends on the week. I'm usually trying to think several weeks ahead to, keep those in the pipeline.
Okay. Well, then to get into politics for a moment, for a few minutes, if you have the time,
Sure.
what do you think the three biggest problems in the world today are?
Well, in the world, that's a big question. Number one right now has got to be still, I think, the economy. And it most usually is, right? People's pocketbooks matter. Can you put food on the table? Especially, I'm single, so it's not as big an issue or concern. But if you've got a family, feeding the family has got to be your number one priority all the time. All right. If you've got kids, feeding those mouths, keeping a roof over their head, keeping clothes on their back. So the economy is always number one. And there is no doubt that while maybe not officially in a recession, things aren't great. Inflation is out of control like it hasn't been in 4 decades. So, uh, other than that, I think it breaks down to you regionally, right? It's not just the economy, stupid. It's all politics is local. I forget, was that Tip O'Neill who coined that? I think that might have been Tip O'Neill. Uh, Whereas it's the economy, stupid was the Democrat James Carville, who came up
Hmm.
with that for the Clinton campaign, because the H.W. Bush economy took a dip to help Bill Clinton get elected.
Hmm. What do you think some solutions are then?
Well, right now in the U.S., the biggest issue is energy. We were energy independent until just recently. Finally, after decades, the United States used to be energy dominant and an exporter of energy when oil was first starting to really be refined for automobiles, and that we were the major producer of it till the Middle East became the dominant oil producer. But recently we became energy independent. But unfortunately, Joe Biden, for whatever you valid or invalid reasons, I'm not going to bother to argue about, took that away. And whether you need broccoli or toilet paper or a big screen TV, all of that takes energy to make and transport. So the cost of everything is through the roof. A lot because of we're no longer energy independent and an exporter. Now you can hear my phone ringing in the background. I forgot to unplug it.
Yeah, that's all right. It's all right. With get your thoughts on this then. So dealing with historical fiction, you could have a meal with 5 people. They could be dead or alive. Not dead at the meal, but if they were dead, they
I
could
know
be
what you mean.
alive in there. And language is not an issue. What 5 people would you invite?
Oh, that's a tough one. Off the top of my head, Reagan and Thatcher, Churchill would definitely want to be on that list. And don't take this the wrong way, but just, from the standpoint of what would it be like to sit across the table from evil and try to have a conversation? Hitler.
Oh.
Right? Time magazine named Hitler Man of the Year, not because he was good, but he was driving the news of that time. But like now, as far as off from that, actor wise, like Reagan again would come up, John Wayne. Would love to be able to sit down with John Wayne. Clint Eastwood, of course, is still alive. I'd love to be able to chat with him. In the literary world, well, how would you turn down a chance to speak with Hemingway, right?
I feel like you end up getting in a fight, Hemingway and John Wayne.
Yeah. Well, not at the same table, right? Yeah, those would have to be different dinner outings. But yeah, like music wise, Rick Springfield is one of my favorite artists. And yeah, I think I knew. I wish I had Jesse's Girl. Oh God, that's one of his worst songs. I get that it's kind of clever and catchy, but oh my! And without that song, he wouldn't be what he is today. But I think that's one of his worst songs. He's got a lot of great stuff. But I've been fortunate enough to not have dinner with him, but I've been able to meet him and talk with him a few times. So, who else music wise? Well, Michael Jackson and Prince do, they're in Elvis, obviously. Going back, country wise, maybe like a George Jones or a Tom T. Hall. I mean, I can't limit that list to just a couple.
All right. Some good ones. I'll think about that. I liked Ricky Gervais's take on who would you invite to a dinner party? Would you rather have someone with a peanut allergy or Hitler? Because the peanut allergy is going to mess everything up. Yeah. But Hitler would probably be very happy to have the different foods. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh, Ricky Gervais is in Dave Chappelle, and like I watched the Gutfeld show. Tom Shalhoub, Jim Norton, Joe Mackey, uh, Jamie Lissow, I think are some of the greatest comics of our time because they don't let the censorship and the cancel culture dictate. Ricky Gervais, when he hosted, was at the Oscars, and literally was attacking people in the audience because he had the cojones to go there. I may not necessarily like his politics at times, but he's a great comedian because he's willing to go at it.
Yeah. I was listening to Jason Whitlock's podcast where he's talking about the responsibility of certain people in society and that comedians have that responsibility to be able to call out, just to always speak as much truth as possible. And I think you with Gervais and Dave Chappelle, that if you had just those two guys explaining society and what's going on from a regular point of view, that you cover a lot of ground there. Those are two good insights into clarity of thinking. Kind of like if you were to say, if you could read all of Hawthorne and all of Melville, or maybe Shakespeare in there too, that you would have the English language down if you could read
Uh-huh.
those two. So I think that's
Couple
like,
other names for dinner in the comedy. Oh, I'd love to sit down with George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Robin Williams, right? Dean Martin. I loved his comedy. I loved his music, his movies, his the Dean Martin celebrity roast. I know they called Jeff Ross the dean of mean, or the dean of celebrity roast now, but you've not seen celebrity roast until you've seen the old Dean Martin celebrity roast, right? I mean, they loved each other. They took jabs at each other. It wasn't mean. Like now, it's just mean for the sake of mean and how crude they can be. But uh oh God, one of the Rat Pack, Sammy Davis Jr. Oh, they loved each other. They really loved each other, and they refused to eat dinner places. Back then, still segregation, right? You either let Sammy in, or we don't eat at your place. And of
yeah,
course, they bent where the no black policy for Sammy, but because they loved each other, they were friends, and they stood up for each other, and it was all it, heart based and out of love that they joked and teased one another. I've got like a 10 DVD set of all the Dean Martin celebrity roasts. I highly recommend you get them if you don't have them. They're still timely today with the people they had on and the way we need more of that. We need more of that love. There's so
yeah,
much hate today. Hate, 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 covetous, envy, jealousy. Oh, too much of
yeah.
that today.
It did seem like those were more clever, good-natured ribbing rather than just the meanness, nastiness. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Don Rickles. I got to see Don Rickles in Vegas. Uh, and oh, Larry King was in the audience. Oh my God, he laid into him mercilessly, But Don Rickles would lean over and kiss Sammy Davis Jr. on the head and then go back to the program. Did I get any black on me? There
Hmm.
was no racism involved in any of that. Today, it's just mean stuff.
Yeah, I concur. What's the best way for people to be able to follow all your social media things and your writing?
Well, I have several websites, josephmlenard.us, and it looks French. It's not. It's not Lenard. It's Leonard without an O. And I have to use my middle initial because there is a Joseph Lenard out of the Carolinas that's also an author. So josephmlenard.us, terrorstrikes.info, tinyurl.com/Christitutionalist politics. It's pronounced like an A, but it's CHRISTI, Tutionalist. That gives you to the podcast. And of course, you could go to thelibertybeacon.com, follow my writings there under Joseph M. Lenard. I also write for beforeitsnews.com at J. Leonard Detroit, which is my handle on almost all social media platforms.
Okay. I'll have those links in the show notes. So if anybody needs to click directly to them, they'll be there. What is the thing you're working on right now?
Right now, I plan to drop Constitutionalist Politics to the book June 1st of this year. So that's my immediate need. to finish, but I've got multiple irons in the fire.
Okay.
But that
All
one
right. Well,
kind of got a date set. So
yeah, it's good to motivate you. Have the date. Thank you very much for all your time. I don't want to take up all your day. You got a lot of stuff going on, but
oh, hey, that's quite all right. I appreciate. Yeah, I never know how much time we're going to spend. Like my shows, I could do a 20-minute show. I could do an hour and 15. Uh, Different podcasts. I've done as little as 7 minutes on
oh,
Chat and Spin out of England, and I've done Maverick News up in Canada. I've been on several times 3.5 hours. The longest I was on was a guy. I don't remember the name of the show. It was his first ever podcast. I was his first guest. It was probably what him, his mom, his dad, maybe his sister, and two friends paying attention. We went down rabbit hole after rabbit hole kept opening. We went for 4 hours. I'm sure no one made it through for the
nice.
full 4 hours, but hey, I'm game. Like I said, I'm a talker. I'm never at a loss for words.
Well, it's out there now for the AIs to take from, so that's good. At least the AI will watch it. I usually for the goal is 10 minutes to 3 hours. That's my goal, somewhere in
Oh,
there.
wow. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. 10 again, with today's twatter attention span, unfortunately, a lot of people are only going to tune in if it's short. And that's such a shame because there's so much good material over that longer time. But that's why I try to keep my shows shorter. You're more likely to attract some first time listeners or viewers if it's short, right? For them to give you a sample. Once you've developed an audience, you can go longer and longer because people know you, know what to expect, and know they're going to get good stuff out of you.
yeah, I think that's what I like about podcasting and listening to them or watching them myself is just it's like you're part of the conversation. You're not you're not able to talk in there if you're just watching or listening to somebody's podcast, but it is more of just the art of talking. And I think that's missing in the world today where people are just, they don't have the time to do it or don't make the time to do it or don't know how to. So I appreciate your conversation.
And like you said, it's for a listener or a viewer, if you gravitate and find shows that you like, the host and the type of guests, or like with my show, again, mostly being monologue, if you're interested in the Christitutionalist as a concept, then you're likely then, if of the like mind or same mindset, that you might think, oh, well, they should say such and such. And then usually a few minutes later, someone will indeed have that same thought and vocalize something you're thinking. So, in like what you said, in a way, that show is yours too. You're part of that show. That show is expressing your viewpoints, your feelings, but more importantly, your logic and reason thinking, preferably.
Yeah, I agree. That's how it works out a lot of the times. Hmm. All right. Again, thank you for your time. All your links will be in the show notes, and I'll talk to you on the other side of this searing drum solo exit.
I like the music. I like the intro.
All right. Thanks. I'll talk to you in a minute.
All right.